Welcome back, and one of my favorite people is Jonathan Rothschild here with Jonathan, of course, is a colleague for many years. He's probably one of the most brilliant nutraceutical developers in history, not just in America. And you've looked for orphan nutraceuticals. Orphan means it's something that's been discovered, researched, and been known about for a long time in many cases, but it's not fully developed. And for example, one of the ones we've recently kind of relabeled is VascuCare, which, because it doesn't just work in the vasculature, it's propionyl L-carnitine. This particular form is the one that's most researched, and it's been used in the Italian cycling team to win the, I think 3 or 4 years ago now, the International Cycling Championship. It restores, along with CoQ10, our CoQ10 Supreme, which is the only non-crystallizing CoQ10, CoQ10 ubiquinol, and of course you've other amazing formulas, mitocarnitine, which we've dropped because we got the propionyl carnitine VascuCare, but mitochondrial catalyst and uridine, which is a triacetyluridine. These are amazing mitochondrial support formulas, and I'd like to start off with those and the VascuCare, because your breakthroughs and these we call orphan nutraceuticals integrate so nicely with all our other NutriMeds. We've reversed congestive heart failure, dementia, chronic mitochondrial dysfunction diseases, and it's interesting that basically the primary cause of aging, although it's an informational disorder of signal to noise and the ability to photocopy yourself into the future epigenetically, the primary cause is mitochondrial dysfunction, and you live as old and as well as your mitochondria. So kudos to you, Jonathan. Tell us about your formulas, VascuCare, mitochondrial catalyst, and uridine.
Well, uridine and the mitochondrial catalysts contain cyclic nucleotides, which are not only biochemical building blocks, but also nutraceuticals. And they're often neglected. They're as important as vitamins, minerals, enzymes, amino acids. And I'm surprised that there's less interest in this, but now it's at the forefront in biotechnology. And there was a study at MIT combining uridine and DHA and cytidine choline for dementia, as you mentioned, and early to moderate Alzheimer's disease. We don't have to work with chemicals to deal with the neurofibrillary tangles or to have neural-based fibrinolytic agents. The other thing that we were referring to in your VascuCare formula is the inclusion of the third-generation carnitine, which is a propionyl L-carnitine. And they have had studies for ischemic heart disease, peripheral occlusive vascular disease, intermittent claudication, and this is examples of when people cannot walk more than 10 steps. Now, can you imagine in an otherwise healthy individual, if we can outperform our normal cardiac function, how protective this would be? We're interested in cardioprotective agents.
Well, I'm going to say this, but the conventional doctors misapply 80% of drugs 80% of the time. And there are a few drugs in the right application that can be used, like an ACE receptor blocker or the very careful use of diuretics. But a lot of blood drugs are just plain dangerous. Full non-select cardioselective beta blockers, calcium channel blockers should never, ever be given, or HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors, like cholesterol-lowering drugs like Zocor, Lipitor, Crestor. They're on my don't ever take, oh my God list. And when we're talking about mitochondrial dysfunction, we have had a large number of people we've reversed, not only severe hypertension, but also cardiac dysfunction, post-cardiac heart attack where they damage the heart muscle and restore the damaged heart muscle, or congestive heart failure, which is basically a mitochondriopathy. Using the VascuCare, your propionyl carnitine, CoQ10 Supreme, CoQ10 ubiquinol, uridine, and mitochondrial catalysts. And we use ALC-1000 acetylcarnitine and D-ribose, as well as our new one we've just added, the NADH, which is nicotine adenine dinucleotide hydride. The combination of the D-ribose, ALC-1000, and of course we now have our new drink, which is a Sports Energy Light. So my glass sitting on my desk now has Sports Energy Light, your D-ribose, and ALC-1000, and when I get my latest update, I'm going to be putting the NADH in there as well. We've had all kinds of people that their doctors said, you're in terminal congestive heart failure, and we reverse it to normal. And the doctors can't do it. They give Pacerone, which is really dangerous. It's got black box warnings. They give digoxin for somebody maybe in atrial fibrillation, by the way. If you take digoxin, can increase death rate 29 to 70%. Sudden cardiac arrest, taking digoxin if you have atrial fibrillation. Calcium channel blockers, these permanently damage your ion channels for calcium. So, Jonathan, let's talk about these solutions because they actually work. I can tell people which drugs they can take minimal amounts, like a mild diuretic or a little bit of Lasix or an ACE receptor blocker. But if you have a serious problem like congestive heart failure, chronic fatigue syndrome, or some form of muscle myopathy, or even a CNS problem where you're getting older and you're getting what we call diabetes of the brain, which is astrocyte insulin resistance syndrome, otherwise known as type 3 diabetes or diabetes of the brain cells. We call it Alzheimer's, but it's actually diabetes of the brain. Your propionyl carnitine or CoQ10 Supreme, etc., can reverse that. Interesting, hey?
Yeah, and also when you speak about calcium channel blockers, these and beta blockers are often prescribed for the rest of one's life. Why not
which is often shortened
with a physiologic calcium channel blocker, such as magnesium taurate or other salts of magnesium? It's just a safer way to go. In fact,
that's why we use our brain mag, and we use
very informed cardiologists use magnesium.
Well, we use magnesium glycinate. We use the magnesium taurate that you've developed, and of course we also have Spilkes, which is the Yiddish for pins and needles for calcium magnesium taurate to stop muscle spasm, and anxiolytic to actually break anxiety attacks. We use that along with our Calm Mind, Posinol, which you make. Calm Mind, which is myoinositol, xanthine, L-theanine, and GABA. So basically, with what I call the palette strokes and brush strokes of these combinations of nutraceuticals, we can paint a picture of a future health that's based on biochemistry and physiology, not the toxicology of polypharmacy. Interesting, hey?
Yeah, well, I think you have very good protocols for people who are looking at alternatives to conventional prescriptions.
And by the way, what I find is that if doctors are willing to contact me, I never get flack. They're just like little children say, yeah, give me more cookies. Please teach me. But if they won't call me or they have attitude, there's no way you can actually convince them. People say, call my doctor. I said, are you crazy? If your doctor calls me, I'll help them and no charge. But they have to understand, I've been at this a very long time. You know, it's approaching, pretty soon it'll approach half a century. And for someone to think that someone as inquisitive as me, who's also had a biochemistry degree before I even went into medicine in 1973, and has been asking zillions of questions forever and coming against opposition, they think that somehow they're going to know more than me. It's kind of obscene, isn't it?
Well, one thing to remember is that physicians are human beings just on the same level as any mortal patient. And the way to convince them is to see what they would themselves take and their family, dear ones as well.
Well, I often find that's how I help doctors, is they themselves have come to the end of their medical knowledge and their colleagues' knowledge, and they're frightened, and they realize if they don't reach out to someone like me who's a box agnostic, because they don't believe in boxes, that they're not going to get better. And they know that the toxic polypharmacy, in fact, it's interesting that 93% of oncologists, that's cancer doctors that give chemo, would not take chemo for a whole range of cancers, including pancreatic cancer, but they will give it to their patients. A number of doctors I know won't take vaccines or won't take certain drugs like calcium channel blockers or HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors because they know they're toxic. In fact, it's proven they cause diabetes. If you take an HMG-CoA reductase inhibitor, big lawsuits right now against the drug companies because they take women and make them diabetic, and now they're trying to prove that it also does it in men. So if you want my hit list, it's based on research, literature, and lawsuits. As I say, there's nothing worse than an MD, JD with a law degree, the brains and the guts that stand up against the medical profession that are no longer practicing. Bad situation, Doc. Back and Jonathan, so we've got some amazing things that we've collaborated on over the many years, and of course our NutriMed line, combine these and weave them, I call the colors of your future wellness. And it really is neat. Let's go down through some of them so we can kind of look at all the different NutriMed formulas where you've contributed. Let's look at, Bladder Up. That's one of my favorites. Natural bladder control reduces hyperactivity. It's basically a pumpkin seed extract and Swedish flower pollen. These are 1-2 punch for bladder irritability, for trigonitis, ureaplasma problems, uterine enlargement or prostate enlargement causing bladder irritability, or low-grade yeast or other infections in the bladder, all causing troubles, or even we call minor stone formation. Tell us about the two of them, Bladder Up and Swedish flower pollen.
When you look at insomnia, which is one of the most common patient complaints, there's different types. There's people who cannot fall asleep at night, but more common as we age is the intermittent awakening. Very often when people have a signal lost in diurnal variation where they have to urinate at night, in the middle of the night, they cannot get back to sleep. And this is often due to bladder irritability. And instead of using these anticholinergic drugs, you can work with physiologic agents such as pumpkin seed extract, which has been used for hundreds and hundreds of years. In fact, there's a whole Native American pharmacopoeia relating to pumpkin seed. And the other is Swedish flower pollen. So we're actually looking at ethnobotanical uses of or approaches to common conditions. And right. I tie, not just myself, but others, consider a lot of sleep disorders due to bladder irritability.
Let's invent a new term for it. We'll call it bladder hyposomnia.
Very good.
See, I like to invent lingo, just like the Germans. The Germans are very good at inventing words, which is why it's such a good language for science. If you want to publish in science, you want to publish in English and in German. It's even better than publishing in Japanese or Chinese, because their languages don't really lend themselves to describing exactly what's going on. But German, or the English language, if you use it properly, if you're a proper word or thoughtsmith, you can actually describe what's going on. The next one,
like
I think,
the German word Schadenfreude, which means taking pleasure in the misery of others. Sometimes I look at modern medicine in that category.
Well, I think when I went into medicine, my advisor in my PhD program told me, he said, "DEAGLE, you already finished your project. Just have to write the thesis at 21. You'll have your PhD before you're 22 and a full professorship before you're 28. When you go into medicine, you're going to deal with serial killers, psychopaths, and narcissists." And I looked at him like, I hope not. And he said, "You're going to find out the hard way, DEAGLE." And unfortunately, that's the case. And most
There's
doctors
no
are really
of narcissists in medicine, and
right.
usually
There's also
the low-level physicians.
Well, and often the state licensing authority, they really can't accomplish anything new, and they never discover anything. And the fact is that if you find a solution to a problem, it's bad for the business model of medicine. The average person in cancer, for example, generates $1.3 billion, but I can refer them to a cancer clinic, let's say the ISILS clinic in Mexico. They take our nutraceuticals. They go to the ISILS clinic, and for a cost of $17,000 for 2 weeks in hospital and $17,000 for their special T-cell activated after they do a RNA amplified T-cell clone to kill their cancer after they actually tune it into the RNA of the cancer, your cancer's gone. You just get IV Laetrile, hyperthermia, hyperbaric oxygen, a number of other treatments, and it's all covered. 6 months of medication afterward at a tiny fraction of what it would cost in America to make certain. They salt you to death with paint-by-number chemo that doesn't even do gene-based cancer therapy based on which genes are turned on and off, like the Brzezinski Clinic or the ISILS Clinic in Santa Barbara. So I use, I tell you, the medical profession are out to lunch. Now, it doesn't mean there isn't something good in medicine. I'm a surgeon as well, and there's an appropriate place for surgery, heart surgery, cancer surgery, if you've got a blocked artery or a compressed nerve bundle or a viscus or something like that. But most of the treatments are meddlesome or inappropriate. And even the American Murder Association, they call them the AMA, will admit that. Next one I'd like to talk about, let's see, carnosine. Prevents sugar cross-linking. Carnosine, very important. We have carnosine for the eye, dimethylcarnosine in CanC eye drops, but for your blood vessels, you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. Really, really important. Synaptin, another one. Let's talk about synaptin and carnosine. These are really, really cool.
Farnesene is a singlet oxygen quencher. That's an unpaired electron with oxygen prooxidant, and that causes cellular disruption and aging. So this is a very specialized antioxidant for singlet oxygen quenching.
Right.
And the synaptin is a neuroprotective agent that has Bacopa monnieri, as well as some other blood-brain barrier passage agents.
I think it also has huperzine A, which, by the way, was in a movie with Bradley Cooper a few years ago for the movie Limitless.
Right.
And when you start taking our brain formulas, we have Cognition Plus and Brain Power, which is the vinpocetine, and then you take synaptin. I mean, this trio is like blam, your IQ is going up. I say talk of the smarter in an hour pill combination. Let's see.
And if you can't remember where you put your keys, that's one thing. But if you can't remember what your keys are used for, then that's another issue.
You're also a comedian and a musician now. You picked up a new skill set. Ellagic acid, this is one of my favorites, and I found out it doesn't just repair DNA. We use it for cancer. It turns out it repairs blood vessel walls, and there's research now to say if you take Ellagic, you can actually look at a scanning electron microscope. You can look at what's called a D-scan ultrasound of your carotid arteries or a microscopic evaluation of your blood vessels, and it repairs the capillary lining in your blood vessels and your endothelial lining of your arteries. Ellagic acid. It repairs your DNA. So if you got cancer, it actually helps to stimulate the cancer cells to repair the DNA or make the cells go through apoptosis. Different mechanism than Malignablock, but Ellagic's pretty neat stuff. It's actually 300 times higher concentration than the ancient Hebrew pomegranate, which is on the sacred capitals at the top of all the buildings, including the temple, is Ellagic. Terminelli Chibulia. Anything further, Jonathan, on Ellagic?
Yes, on Ellagic, if people have a familial history or genetic predisposition, it's a good prophylactic agent.
Yeah, and the fact is that some people have decreased DNA repair. If you're working around, let's say, a nuclear plant, or you're trying to repair your DNA from exposure of a nuclear reaction, Ellagic acid and Malignablock, the 1-2 punch for DNA repair. The other is our full vitamin K2. Another one I like is IBS Care. This is a special slow release, and we had a consult in the first hour we talked about with very bad esophageal reflux and GE reflux problems where the peristaltic movement makes the worm of your esophagus crawl from the cardia, which is the upper part of the stomach, into your chest. The IBS Care reverses that. So, amazing stuff. Got to get back on soon, Jonathan, to talk about all the other NutriMeds.
Okay.
Stay right there. We'll get you. Stay right there. We'll get you a time scheduled, and we'll be back in a few minutes coming up. And then hour number 3, our science, astrophysics, plagues, prepper, and much, much more in hour 3 in just a moment. Jonathan, you still there? Tell us about the latest on cardiovasc. I get more testimonials every week, head to toe, literally, people saying, Doc, you gave this to me for my heart. My brain works better. I'm able to have sex again. Sexual function's working. My legs don't cramp. I don't get intermittent claudication. The doctor who planned on doing a bypass operation of my leg because I have a blocked pudendal artery canceled the surgery. You hear these stories, don't you?
Yep. Another one I hear a lot of is that it's helping people with blood pressure.
Yeah, the blood pressure normalizes, and of course, if you get the Berkeley, Berkeley test strips, you can test the nitric oxide in the back of your tongue. And you can get if you want to get real fancy, you can get a microscope through me from China, because the Chinese are very advanced in this in Chinese medicine. And you can look at the microcapillaries and see the improvement in circulation. Hypertension really is a compensation of your heart for decreased perfusion of your microcirculation. And the peristaltic wave caused by nitric oxide and contraction of your arterioles, arteries, and capillaries that moves blood around your body. It's not your heart. Your blood's moved by your arteries and your veins, your venules. So this is something that I challenge any cardiologist, and I can actually show them the nonlinear equations for blood movement in the cross-sectional surface of the combined blood vessels compared to the aorta that proves that it's impossible for your heart to pump the blood around your body. When the heart blood pressure goes up, it's simply the heart trying to compensate for decreased perfusion. Interesting, hey?
Yep. Yeah.
And of course, the cardiologist is there. I've been a cardiologist 40 years and nobody's told me that. That's because you haven't had an original thought in your head. And most people, and this is insulting, but you need to be insulted out there in order to make you think. Most people, if they had an original thought, they probably die of spontaneous human combustion. It would act as a spark, like, I feel this burning sensation. Oh, I'm about to go up in flames just because I had an original thought. But if they let that little spark happen every day and just wake up in the morning and realize that they shouldn't have an intellectual attachment to their previous levels of stupidity, they would become wiser because, as it says in the Bible, wisdom starts when our limits of our knowledge are reached, when we humble ourselves before the Most High God and our previous level of stupidity. So you become wise when you understand the limits of your knowledge.
Yeah,
And of course, that's what your dad did as a pharmacognizist. Sam did, Sam Ibrahim, developing Cardiovasc, which was called Cardivite in the past. We have the U.S. version that contains ginkgo biloba, which is important for brain microcirculation. So here's the benefits: hypertension, microcirculation, cognition, kidney function. That means your creatinine clearance improves, peripheral circulation, sexual improvement, and anti-aging. In fact, if you don't have proper circulation, you can't deliver nutrients and oxygen to your tissues. You also can't pull the toxins and heavy metals and chemicals out. So it contributes to everything, including detox and stem cell support. So we've seen people, for example, that have had taken Cardiovasc after they've had a heart attack. They seem to say, "Doc, I had a heart attack. I got a low cardiac index. What do I do?" And I said, "Well, the first thing is just take what we used to call Cardivite." And they said, the doc went bed and did a CT scan and a transesophageal echo and said, "My heart wall motion is restored to normal." "How can that be?" I said, "Because only maybe 2 or 3% of the heart muscle cells are dead. The rest of it's just injured, where the mitochondria are kind of like shocked. And its heart muscles, cardiomyocytes, aren't contracting. But once we restore normal metabolism and microcirculation to those cardiomyocytes, they just start contracting again, and all of a sudden the akinetic heart wall restores to normal." He said, "My doctor can't believe it." I said, "Well, then will he call?" "Well, I don't know if my doctor will call." But he still said, "Whatever you're taking," this is the typical story of what I call knucklehead doctors, "whatever you're taking, keep taking it, but please don't tell me what it is." You probably hear that. I'm thinking, and what you should do as a patient is you should, walk backwards out of the doctor's exam room and say goodbye and never call or write to him again. Because going to that doctor will be bad for your future health. Because they'll give you another toxic drug that'll counteract the nutraceuticals we give and will hasten your demise, your death, and your dementia. So let's go over the components in...
Yep.
Yeah, that's how it operates. Again, remember the medical industry, and one of my favorite things I like to quote is Voltaire's play for about 240 years ago, roughly. And it was a young doctor that took care of the older doctor's practice, and he told the older doctor when he returned after a few weeks of vacation outside of Paris, and he says, "Mrs. Such and Such, who bothered you every week for years, I have cured her." He said, "Cure," and he's, of course, on the stage. They actually have this play where he's having a fit, and he says, "We do not cure disease, we treat it." And of course, that's Voltaire's sarcasm, of course, which is he was attributed to having a significantly high IQ because he was an iconoclast of and the galactic level pariah, which I am aspiring to be a pariah. I'm waiting for my pariah badge in the mail. And I'm teaching other people to become pariahs too, and box agnostics. Get out of the box and stop being nice. And don't be mean. Being mean means you don't care about other people. Being loving means you're going to tell them the truth of, hey, stop those beta blockers and take your Cardiovasc. I could actually make a kind of we want to call almost like a
jingle,
a play, one of these little short medical plays, and use various musical lines because I'm a barbershop singer. And we could actually, it would be funny to actually have a medical play and put the actual names of nutraceuticals and protocols in it for people to realize you don't need to choose death. And it's like, the play would be called The Nutrimed Way. Why die today? Go the Nutrimed way. Get away from that doctor. He'll kill you and go ka-ching. And he'll fill you with drugs and everything toxic. And when your liver's bursting and your heart is dying, he will say it's your fault you didn't get well. and he will go ka-ching.
Alrighty.
I'm pretty bad. Hey, I'm in a different mood today. So let's go through some of the nutraceuticals. What's in them? All the way from the different flower and leaf and all the other parts of the cardiovascular.
Sure. Well, one of the main ingredients is hawthorn, and we source our hawthorn from the leaf and flower. So, contrary to popular opinion, it's not the hawthorn berries that have an impact on cardiac function. It's the leaf or flower.
And by the way, the other so-called copycats that try to copy your formula use the wrong component of the plant, and they don't test every batch for high-pressure chromatography to make sure the biological molecule it's active is actually in the supplements.
Yeah.
Only Cardiovasc, which is the new daughter, or I would say daughter and son of Cardivite. Son of, hey, how about this? Cardiovasc is son of Cardivite.
Exactly, yeah. And the other thing to remember, too, with our hawthorn, it's grown in Europe, sourced and grown in Europe. And that's important, too, because plants that are grown, hawthorn plant that's grown in China, for example, is actually a different genus. Doesn't act on the body in the same way.
Doesn't have the target biomolecule.
Exactly.
So if you don't have the European version and the right part of the plant, why do you expect it to work?
Yeah, and we chose the hawthorn based on the research that's out there, right? So we've got clinical field evidence that we submitted to obtain our Health Canada approval, and that's how we know what the right components are.
Yeah. Wow. Now let's go to the next component. What's the next one?
So then we have an aged garlic extract, 1% allicin.
Exactly. Kills off the nanobacteria that form plaque, acts as a natural angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitor, and, of course, milk thistle. We're on break. Back to the NutriMed report, and we had a call in the first hour by Roy Callahan back in Georgia. They wanted to call in. It's something earth-shakingly important news. Roy, if you want to call in, the number or anybody to call in any hour of the week is 800-259-5791. 800-259-5791. So it's important. Call in. And you have to tell the board op exactly what your question or statement is. No flim-flamming around. And has no ad hominem attacks. You can't attack anybody, but you can't attack their ideas. Ideas are open season. People aren't. So I think that unless it's someone who really deserves it, which sometimes we do, have to say that someone's saying something that's bad, like Marshall Masters, when Professor McKenney brings up his name and we talk about it. So we're going to be joined in a second with Dave, and I heard Dave is ready now. Dave, where are you?
Hi. I'm in my car.
You're in your car, hey? Okay, well, you're traveling, probably doing some broking or real estate stuff. Now, Dave, you're a broker and a realtor, and you're also a prepper expert. And although you're soft-spoken, you're pretty brilliant. You're good at Pictionary and many other skill sets that are required by non-realtors. And we had some fun, too, on a couple different cruises, especially with your wife, Jean, who's, I think, probably one of the most crack-up stand-up comedians and singers out there. And she's pretty funny. She's as funny as you are smart. How about it that way, right? Which is pretty funny, and you're pretty smart. So, Dave, we're dealing with some pretty serious issues here. I tell people, a lot of time people don't take me seriously unless I make them laugh. But we're dealing with what I call pre-Armageddon days, and it's not a nice thing to think about because judgment's going to be held back by God, but held back in the sense that some people are going to make it and some people aren't. You don't want to be in a big city if the power goes out. And I've said this before, just recently, and I'm just going to, maybe I should read this actually. It'd probably be worthwhile to read this to everybody. I had an interesting email from a gentleman from Robert Vicino, founder and CEO of the Vivos Group. And it turned out that he is the director of the Vivos Group that has these underground worldwide shelters, Life Assurance for a Dangerous World. And you probably heard about them, both the Vivos Corporation. In fact, he sent me a link to the most exclusive billionaire bunker, for Doomsday over in Germany that was basically built he posted up the article in Forbes Life magazine, Forbes.com, and I've got the link here. And it's like, this place is fabulous. Even it makes it feel like you're not inside the doomsday bunker. You know, we've got nice pools and aquariums where you sleep by them and outside in trees and everything. I mean, it's pretty amazing. But to be honest with you, I tell people survival needs to be in layers. 96% of disasters are going to be real simple. I live in the rural area of Vista, California, and I call that what I call my level 1 facility. In other words, we're an 8-home gated community, and I have a greenhouse and fruit and nut trees, and I can grow things, and my neighbor down the road, we'd be collaboratively putting in chickens and laying eggs and things like that, trapping quail. But that's what we call level 1. Level 2 is what I call Dave and Jean's new, we call Prepper City, if you want to call it, like the ancient Bible, the cities of refuge. And there would be anywhere from, say, 60 to 100 families, which would have cross skill sets from, you know, policing to EMT to welders to nurses and doctors and dentists, and basically, a twist on the words of Hitler, Rotten Clinton. It takes a village. It takes a village of people that are like-minded, meaning they all have to be believers, number one. They can't have disparate belief systems. You can't have people that are, Allahu Akbaring at the same time and wanting to turn everybody into Sharia law when you have, so you want to have believers there, number one. Number two, you want people that want to learn, so you cross-train people in skill sets. And you have the capacity to get people out of the very, at least, get them out of their home, out of a large city. If they live in Los Angeles, Chicago, whatever, you can move them out. Even if they're not going to move out of their state, you can work with other brokers to get them to a property outside of the big cities. The very first thing I tell people is, get yourself outside the big city far enough that if all hell breaks loose, you're not going to be in the blast zone, let's put it that way. Level 2 is what I think, and I'm going to want to announce today, I think we should be putting together cities of refuge, not just here, but maybe Ecuador, Patagonia, Uruguay, other places where people will have things like the wind generator and light sail energy storage systems, where they'll be able to have communities where they have plenty of, primary water, where they'll have self-protection, where they can have a perimeter control, where they can actually grow food and continue some level of civilization with energy generation, proper recycling, so that they can actually survive the collapse of civilization. Now, people say, well, I call that advanced level 2. Level 3 is so bad, you got to go dive in for probably multiple years in a bunker underground, like the Vivos company. And I'm probably bringing on Robert Vicinio to talk about his Vivos facilities. And the pictures of this one that they built in Germany, in the old style German underground facility, is pretty fabulous. I mean, if you got to kind of cringe watching your high definition OLED TV, watching what's going on the surface, this is the place to be. But to be honest with you, I'd much rather be hearing jokes in our little community with Dave and Jean up in the PA system, and having 60 families go meeting at church or for discussions, and having people taking care of their health and growing good organic food and protecting each other when the cities are going to hell in a handcart. So, Dave, I would call my priority is what I call, after 2 months of things really, the power's gone and the economy's collapsed. Although I live in North County Vista in a rural area, eventually I want to be in what I call a city of refuge. So tell us what you conceive will be a city of refuge. First level, of course, is get people, for God's sake, out of the big cities. If you're in a big city and you're listening to this program anywhere on the planet, get out. Get out now. Because it's not just here. It could be near Jakarta, Indonesia, Johannesburg, central Germany. You need to get out and get into a rural area, whether it's the Black Forest of Germany or a rural area outside of Johannesburg or some big city or outside of Beijing. You need to get your butt out now. And if you have to commute, do that. But for God's sake, realize that things can go to hell in a handcart, and I call this 3-level support. I'm in my level 1 facility right now. Level 2 is Dave and Jean listening to some good humor. And level 3 is the Vivos facility underground, where it's so bad on the surface, you got to go down there and watch DVDs and learn how to play cards and read a lot and take care of each other when things have gone to hell. So, Dave, what do you think?
Well,
anything that somebody wants to set up, I'm ready, willing, and able to help them.
Well, I want to set it up, okay? And here's what I'd like to do. I want to put a proposal out there that if people are willing to put, let's say, $5,000 in, we will collect enough money, we can bring it to Dave and Jean, and you can buy a wonderful piece of property for us. We'll all co-own it. We'll then get turtle tuff shelters and put buildings on it. We'll make sure we have the proper pumps, and we'll go to at least one or more wing generators and light sail energy storage devices. We will have perimeter control, electronics, we'll have everything. We'll bring in former Marines, and by the way, you don't have to pay giant amounts of money like if you do in the Vivos Corporation. What they do in there, it started off was you had to be really rich, but you don't want rich people that don't have skill sets. Somebody like me that is a physician, surgeon, I can even do dental work, natural functional medicine, all the other skill sets, they want somebody like me. But I want people that are Marines, welders, farmers, people that can do a lot of things, take care of babies, midwives. We want a whole range, so literally we create a micro-civilization in a pod, is what I want. And I think that's the way we should build cities in the future. It should not be built on these giant megacities. It should be on pods that contain everything from a theater to church, to central buildings where people can enjoy each other's company, to some good restaurants and places like that. So if you want to know more and you want to get yourself out of the cities, you want the help of a preppers expert, and Dave and Jean, 619-990-6050. Dave and Jean will be back in shortly. If you check out my website, you'll see it linked up. They'll be back shortly today. And coming up in hour number 3, we have Ann Morrison and Professor James McCanney. So we'll see you later, Dave and Jean, for a much bigger program.
Thank you, Dr.
Stay right there. Stay right there, Dave. I got to tell you something. Okay?
Yep.